Hello, this is Zahir Alam. Welcome you all on Frankly Speaking. Our guest today is Marina Mahatir, a popular journalist, columnist, a prolific writer, an activist of social issues, especially HIV/AIDS, an outspoken commentator, and a socio-political blogger of Malaysia. But happen to be, she is the daughter of great Malaysian leader, charismatic leader of Malaysia, Dr. Mahathir Mohammad. But Marina is well known for her in her own profile and merit. Thank you very much, Marina, for joining us on Frankly Speaking. First of all, I know you are in Bangladesh with a lot of appointments, a lot of programs, schedules, and you have, in your country, you are engaged with many movements, especially HIV/AIDS, and you are engaged in a Malaysian AIDS Council for more than a decade, and the chairman of the board of Malaysian AIDS Foundation. So many movements, so many engagements in your country. Yes. But at the very outset, I would like to know about your Bangladesh visit. What are the programs and what you have achieved, or what do you have derived from your visit?
Well, you know, this is my first visit to Bangladesh. It's been a long time coming. I have a lot of friends from here and a lot of colleagues in the AIDS world, and I've always wanted to come but never had the opportunity. So when I had an invitation from the Bangladesh Center for Development, Journalism and Communication to come and speak, I took the opportunity, and I also told other people like UNAIDS and the Asian University for Women. And so then they all got together and put out this schedule for me, which has, you know, is so full. I'm meeting so many people, but it's been great. I'm so impressed by people that I've met. They're very serious. They care a lot about the country and they want to do good things. So it's really been enlightening. It's only 2 days, but I feel I've met so many people, and I'm looking forward to the next few days until I leave.
What are the most important areas you would like to focus on in your particular visit?
Well, mostly I'm focusing on, of course, doing some advocacy on AIDS.
So in your country, you mentioned that more than 80,000 cases already been detected in
Yes.
terms of HIV/AIDS cases. So how you are encountering or how you are fighting this menace?
Well, mostly through education, but targeted education to young people, to women, to different groups of people. A lot of vulnerable communities such as drug users, sex workers, transgendered people, and all that. You know, we have a lot of NGOs that are working in this particular area. So the job of my council before is to build the capacity of these NGOs to do the work for their own target audience, which is all slightly different from each other. And that's the main way we go. And when we do a lot of advocacy work, we did a lot of advocacy for treatment. So now the government provides almost free treatment to Malaysians in the government hospital, which is fantastic. We have mother-to-child prevention programs and a lot of support for children who have been infected.
But what are the reasons for getting infected with, we know the 37 NGOs formed in organizations, and you are fighting and countering this menace. But what is the response from the government side? Is it enough to deal with in your country?
The government has been very supportive. In fact, they were supportive from the beginning for the formation of the Malaysian AIDS Council. So they didn't want to deal with lots of little NGOs working in AIDS. They wanted one channel. And that's how the MAC happened to come. And the government provides funding for programs every year, quite substantial funding. There are some other things we need to still fundraise for, which is why we have a foundation that does fundraising for the same council. But generally, the government has been supportive. We also support them by providing them good feedback and information on what to do, etc., etc. So there's been pretty good cooperation between government and NGOs, which is very important. And we're also trying now to bring in the business sector, because they need to be also part of the response.
So from your part, what message you would like to convey to your Bangladeshi friends who is also fighting or engaged themselves for encountering or dealing with these dangerous problems looming large in the society?
Well, I think that they're doing a pretty good job as it is, you know, and that's why the numbers are low. But the important thing is not to get complacent, not to take your foot off the pedal, so to speak, because really it's one of those diseases that if you take your eye off it and it goes, you know, it gets. And also that I hope the programs here will really meet international standards of prevention, particularly because it's very easy to say, oh, we are unique, we have to solve this in our own way, but in doing that and not using the experience of other countries, I think you can make mistakes, and mistakes can be fatal. You know, I mean, the program must all respect human rights, for instance. It's very important, and it's not easy to do, but the hard work pays off. People like to have simple solutions, just testing everybody or putting everyone away. It doesn't work. It causes stigma and discrimination and all that. So I hope that everyone, and I've seen so far from my colleagues here that they are well aware of successes in other countries and how that needs to be adapted, you know, for Bangladesh.
Yeah, Marina, you know that in a Muslim world, the women folks are being faced a lot of difficulties in terms of their empowerment, in terms of their livelihood and other in education, health sector. So taking into account the global experience, you have traveled many countries and you know about the culture, about the tradition of a Muslim society. And we also share common values, common tradition in many ways. So how do you look at the problem of the struggle of women folk in Muslim world?
Well, for one thing, I don't think that the burdens that women carry is unique to the Muslim world. It also happens in the non-Muslim world. I think that the common factor is really development or lack of development. I think it's a problem in less developed countries where, you know, access to education, access to income generation and all that is limited, and women tend to bear the burdens of this poverty everywhere, no matter whether it's a Muslim country or not. I think in Muslim countries, unfortunately, women are suffering the same fate, but it doesn't have to be, because I think the religion respects women. We have some wonderful role models in the religion, starting with the Prophet's wife, Khadija, and also Aisha, you know, who were leaders. And I think we should bring out these positive examples for modern women, you know, why not? There's much to be done, and I think it is imperative, for instance, for any Muslim country to educate its people, and all its people, including women. We should be upgrading literacy and everything, and that is part of being Islamic, you know, to do that. So I think there's a lot of potential. It's a stereotype in many ways that women in Muslim countries are downtrodden. That's more a result of poverty and of beliefs that have nothing to do with Islam. And in fact, we can use Islam much more positively for the upliftment of women.
But what is the experience of Malaysia in terms of empowerment of women?
I think in Malaysia we have been doing pretty well. Education, you know, is accessible to all women, and we've got into a situation where in the universities there are more women than there are men, and there are women holding high office. We've had Muslim women, in fact, in the government. The governor of the central bank is a woman. The head of the Securities Commission is a woman. There are several women CEOs of major banks and corporations. So it's not unusual anymore to see women in the workplace, women high achievers. My own mother was the second Malay woman doctor in the country, and had a lot of firsts in her career.
Marina, we are talking about the empowerment of women folk, your struggle or movement against the HIV/AIDS, and but we know that you are a journalist and you have started your career in early 80s.
Yes.
And you have been writing relentlessly, and you are a columnist, and
Yes.
you write your column bi-weekly in the very prominent newspaper, The Star in Malaysia.
That's
So
right.
tell us about your journalistic career, something, what the issues you really deal with in your journalistic career. What are the most important things?
I'm not sure I actually have a journalistic career. I started off being a feature writer for Women's Magazine. But after a few years, I went on to other things. I went into public relations, and then when I got married, I stopped. So when I came back from overseas, where I was living after I got married, my former editors who had moved to the Star, they remembered me, and they remembered I could write, so they offered me this column where I could write about anything I wanted. And then the first thinking was that I would write about family and that sort of thing, which is how I started off. But then I found myself unable to not comment on things that were happening around me and all that. So it kind of grew from there. I wrote a lot about women's issues. I wrote sometimes about AIDS. I had some favorite topics like censorship. You know, I'm very against censorship. And you know, just comments on the Malaysian society as it evolved, and when issues came.
Interest about politics?
Not politics exactly. I'm an observer of politics, and I comment on it, both in the column and in my blog. I'm a bit tougher on my blog than I am in my column. So yeah, it's I guess, you know, it's been 18 years, and it seems to resonate with people. People always telling me they read it, they like it. I seem to be saying what they think. So it's nice, and I keep it up as a discipline more than anything. Yeah.
So how do you evaluate the era, the tenure of your father, regime of your father? He's very well known in Bangladesh also, and he is, you know, the architect of the modern Malaysia. Everybody regard him as a great leader of Malaysia, not only Malaysia but in this region also. So how do you evaluate as a daughter of great father?
I think you cannot ask a daughter to evaluate her own father.
But I know you are sometimes you are very critical.
Yes.
About the issues.
Yes, you know, I think I had a reputation for speaking my mind, and I didn't ever censor myself. I would say when I didn't like something was happening, I wasn't personally critical, but I would criticize policies and the handling of certain issues and all that. So
Okay, tell me, what are the most unique thing of your father in terms of building the Malaysia?
Well, I think, you know, overall, of course, I do think that my father did a very good job. I mean, you just look at Malaysia, and you know, I'm old enough to remember a very different Malaysia when we didn't have anything or whatever. And now look at us, we are virtually a first world country. And all that is really, I think, his vision and his passion, you know, to make it all happen. I think the most important contribution that my dad gave to Malaysia and Malaysians is self-confidence. You know, that we can stand against the best in the world, and we have a right to do that. We are not inferior to anybody. And it is, I think he did a lot to try and make Malaysians believe in themselves, which is very important. It's as important as building, you know, tall buildings or having great infrastructure. Belief, self-belief is very important. Yes, yes.
Bangladesh is a land of 150 million people, and a lot of problems around in Bangladesh, especially poverty. Yeah. So what do you think, within your short span of visiting time, what would you suggest, what would you say, taking into experience from the Malaysia, what can be done to get out from the clutch of poverty?
I think the two things that we did do well, you know, especially in the beginning, was that one was education. I think we had very good schools all over the place and very good policies about education. And secondly is healthcare. You know, we inherited it, I guess, from the British, but we had a very good government healthcare system. We reduced the maternal mortality rate to very, very low, and you know, things like clean water and all that. We went through all that before, and I should know because my mother worked in public health, and she was you know, at the front of the clean water campaigns and clean toilet campaigns and that sort of thing. And those basic things need to be done, I think, for any country to move ahead. And then you add on all the other, I suppose, luxuries and all that.
What did you find among the global leaders? They're talking about standing by the poor countries, extending their helping hands to get out from the poverty and developing their nutrition standard, their education, and everywhere, including the fighting HIV/AIDS. How serious they are, the developed world, the rich countries are about facing the challenges of the poor country.
Well, you know, they seem to be serious, you know. I mean, they are providing a lot of aid. It's whether the aid comes with strings.
But how genuine their seriousness is.
Yeah, that's the thing, whether the money goes to the right people, to the right programs, whether it comes with strings attached, and whether there is this thing called donor-driven agenda, you know, where the donor tells you what you should do instead of you getting money for what really needs to be done. I mean, that's that issue. Malaysia has been lucky in that we are not dependent at all on donors, and so we've kind of escaped that sort of thing. But still, I think the one benefit of donors is sometimes they can force good programs on you, which would not happen otherwise. Indonesia, for instance, which faces an AIDS problem that's also fueled by drug use, just like here, is very dependent on donors for the programs, and the donors insisted on having harm reduction programs, which has been a very good thing for Indonesia. I'm not sure that it would have happened without the donors. So you know, there's a pros and cons, but as long as it's not just talk and it really delivers. You know,
there is a confusion. Well, you know, Marina, that a significant number of Bangladeshi migrants worker is in Malaysia. So more or less, there are no complaint by large, but sometimes we hear about some violations of human rights, some violations of their sufferings. There are some complaints. So as a human rights activist, how do you look at this matter and how they should be dealt with about their rights and about their working conditions and all that?
Well, you know, as a writer, I've written about it many times, and as an NGO working in AIDS, I'm also having to deal with the issue of migrant workers because they're extremely vulnerable to HIV. And Malaysia has some testing policies and also some policies that if anyone is found HIV positive, they are deported immediately. And unfortunately, often without telling the person why they're being deported. So they're coming back to their home country with HIV and not knowing about it. And of course, the possibility of spread is there. I think, you know, this has come up many times in my discussions here in Bangladesh. And I think what's really important is for sender and receiver countries to sit down, recognize the problems, and basically treat each other as equals. You know, Malaysia is dependent on migrant workers, and Bangladesh is dependent on sending migrant workers out. So there is a, you know, a mutual need to get something out of this that is mutually beneficial. So I think it's important to discuss this. In Malaysia, unfortunately, I mean, we have Indonesian workers, Bangladeshi, Filipino, Vietnamese, Cambodian, lots of, and they all have problems. There are problems of differences in culture, you know, and difficulties in adaptation. language difficulties, that sort of thing. And you know, we have to just recognize this, you know, and work them all out. I think there are some Malaysians who are under the illusion that we can do without migrant workers. I think that's not possible at all. Not possible. The country will collapse if we take every single migrant worker out. So it's a reality that we have to live with. I think from a human rights perspective and from every human perspective, you know, we should, you know, understand these are human beings and we need to treat them as human beings. And provide, you know, the basic necessities that every human being needs, you know. I don't think anybody really wants to leave their country if they can help it, but if they have to, then I think the least they can expect is to be treated with dignity and respect. And
thank you very much for your sentiment, for your kind words, and we're almost at the end of our program. So yes. What optimism you do have about Bangladesh, about its people? Within the short span of time, you met some people already, and what are the expectations?
Actually, I'm very optimistic about Bangladesh. I think you are going in the right direction, good policies in hand, and lots of good people. I'm been very impressed by the people I've met. They are committed and passionate about their country and wanting to do good. They're very knowledgeable. So I think you have the human capital that you need, and that's the key thing. That's the important thing. And so yeah, I think you will get there. You will do
Thank
well.
you very much,
Thank
Marina
you.
Mahatir, for being with us today. Dear viewers, we thank you indeed and invite to watch our next episode. Until then, do take care and bye-bye.